Hey, Mamdani, it's great to see you.
It's so lovely to see you, Jen. Thank you for having me.
We hear this criticism all the time. I can't even imagine the number of times you have heard it. Things like ideas from progressive Democrats or democratic socialists like yourself, they all sound good on paper, pie in the sky, but they're too expensive to ever happen. They're unrealistic. I just laid out a number of the things that you have already managed to do this year, and you did it, again, while also balancing the city's budget, not cutting services. For people out there who may not be New Yorkers who are tuning into this, how'd you manage to do that?
Well, I think we always asked ourselves the question of how can we actually deliver for what has become the most expensive city in the United States of America? How can we tackle the cost of living crisis? And for all of the conversation of whether or not we can afford it, what we've actually found is that we can't afford to continue to pursue a politics of inaction, a politics of complacency. And what we've done is deliver on a vision of universal child care, as you said, for the first time in New York City history, delivering free child care for 2-year-olds. And this is something that means so much to New York families because, as you know, in our city, it's considered a good deal if you're spending $20,000 a kid per year for child care. This is how we actually drive down the cost of living, and we're proud to be doing it here so that we show that our party can be more than just a negation of what we're seeing at the federal level. We can also actually have an affirmative vision of what we can deliver on the local level.
You've clearly been focused on cutting waste and going through the budget, I assume dollar by dollar, a little more than that, to find savings so that you can do the things you want to do. Having just gone through all that, I just have to ask you about some of the spending we've been seeing out of Washington. I mean, in particular, Trump's decision to use $1.8 billion of taxpayer money as a slush fund for his aggrieved supporters. I mean, that's a lot of money. The people it's going to is its own separate outrageous problem. And the same people who are defending this fund are the ones who spent months claiming you were going to bankrupt New York with your policies. I know, because we've talked a number of times, you never stop smiling through all this, but that has to make you furious, right?
I think it just shows that it's never been about the amount of money. It's about what it's being spent on. And there is a politics across this country that is completely at peace with the idea of spending billions of dollars to enrich those who already have more money than they know what to do with. And what they are offended by is the idea of spending that money to help those who've been left behind by our politics. The idea that we have money in Washington for these kinds of initiatives, when here in New York City, we are looking to protect our New York in the money, it just shows that it's all a question of priorities. It's not a question of what's possible.
There's a lot that could be done with $1.8 billion. I'm sure you could plan some things in New York City. We've seen several proposals, some at the federal level and state level, to tax the money from Trump's slush fund at 100%. I mean, there was one from the governor of California. There's also a bill in the New York State Assembly to do that right now. Anyone who's watched you closely know you're not afraid to tax someone who you think deserves to be taxed. Do you support those kind of proposals?
I think that's the kind of imagination we need to see, whether it's here in New York City or across the country, because what we've found time and again is it feels like the Republican Party has a monopoly on imagination, whereas Democrats are constructing an ever-lowering ceiling of what's possible. And it's time for us to actually show that we are willing to fight for the people who are being left behind by these kinds of policies. And as you said, $1.8 billion could make every bus free twice. That's the kind of money that we're talking about when it comes to New York City. And yet that's the money that they're willing to spend on what are clearly just partisan political priorities.
So if a New York City resident gets money from the slush fund, I mean, you might be open to a proposal, it sounds like, to tax them at 100% that's going through the assembly.
I think it's time to explore every option to see what it can look like to actually fight back against these kind of federal policies, because we're looking at a city that is the most expensive in the United States of America, and it's a city where 1 in 4 people are living in poverty. And the same city which has generated immense wealth is one where so many New Yorkers dread the first of the month because they don't know how they're going to pay for both their rent bill and their utility bill. And for us to see all of this while we have a federal government that is willing to put $1.8 billion into a fund like this, leave alone spend tens of billions of dollars on a war in Iran that not only offends our moral sensibilities or our political sensibilities, but also our economic ones. Because just these kinds of decisions, it's not just a use of money that could be spent for the benefit of working people here. It's also a decision that exacerbates a cost of living crisis across the country and makes it even harder for those working people, no matter what city they call home.
It's sending a moral message, too, about your priorities, which is so key. That's what a budget is. I've been dying to ask you about immigration. I mean, there have been, as you well know, big protests about the conditions at a detention center just across the river from your city in Newark, New Jersey. And in response to those protests, you've probably seen this, but just in case people who are watching haven't seen it, I just wanted to play something that Trump's Secretary of Homeland Security, Markwayne Mullin, said earlier this week.
We're currently drawing up plans to say, listen, in these sanctuary cities where the local radical left Democrats aren't allowing us to do our job and enforce federal laws, then we shouldn't be processing international flights into their cities either.
I mean, that is a very significant statement. I don't have to tell you. New York's JFK Airport processes more international flights than anywhere else in the country. What is your response to that threat from Secretary Mullin?
You know, our laws and our values are not bargaining chips. We will not be threatened to leave so many of the New Yorkers who call this city home prey to these kinds of cruel policies. We are proud of the fact that we are a sanctuary city. We're proud of that for a number of reasons. One, it is a policy designed to keep New Yorkers safe. Two, we know that here in our city, we are proud of the more than 3 million New Yorkers who are immigrants. I'm one of them. And we know that in a city like this, it is incumbent upon us to live up to the ideals of the Statue of Liberty, not just tell people to come and look at it when they visit from across the world.
You speak to the president from time to time. You've spoken to him about his immigration policies in the past. You've even helped get a detainee in New York released. I'm curious, have you spoken to him since Markwayne Mullin made that announcement?
No, I keep the cadence of our conversations private, but what I will say, Jen, is that when I've had those conversations with the president, I have made clear, as you've said, that I view ICE's actions to be cruel and inhumane. These are not actions that serve any interest of public safety. And I say that time and again because what I've seen as the mayor of New York City is an agency that is operating with impunity, whether across the 5 boroughs of New York or whether elsewhere across the country. And so often, New Yorkers have no idea as to what could put them at risk beyond just the simple fact of their existence in this city.
The New York area, as you well know, is also hosting some of the World Cup matches later this year. World Cup tickets are very, very expensive. We could have a long conversation about that. but as part of your affordability agenda, I'm going to call it, you managed to negotiate with FIFA to get tickets priced at just $50 plus free bus travel to and from the stadium for 1,000 New Yorkers. There's also a deal with restaurants. There's a lot going on around the World Cup. The conversation about affordability, I think this is very interesting for a range of reasons, but one is that the conversation about affordability tends to revolve around really important issues, basic necessities, child care, health care, a lot of things you've talked about, other Democrats have talked about. But it made me wonder if this was kind of purposeful. I mean, are Democrats defining affordability too narrowly? Should it be about cultural issues, leisure issues as well, things that people who may not be as political are attuned to?
Absolutely. I think that for too long we've thought about people purely in the context of the time they spend at work and the time they spend at home and not what is it that actually keeps them moving. I can just tell you right now that so much of the energy and the excitement in this city, it's not just in anticipation of the World Cup. It's that the Knicks are in the finals for the first time since 1999. And the excitement and the energy around sports across this country, it is something that is in stark contrast to the fact that sports have become effectively a luxury commodity when you look at the cost of ticket prices, no matter what sport that we're talking about. And so one of the reasons that I wanted to make sure that there were affordable tickets to World Cup games for New Yorkers is that when New Yorkers looked at the prices of those World Cup games and they saw thousands, tens of thousands of dollars, they couldn't even imagine themselves at that game. And that, frankly, is a shame when you consider the fact that soccer at its core is a working class game. And so we are proud of the fact that, as you said, we've secured 1,000 tickets that are $50. And the way that a New Yorker gets it is not by having to know the right politician or the right contact, but just by logging on at 10 a.m. into a lottery system and putting their name in. And if they win, they'll get, a ticket for themselves, a ticket for a friend, and as you said, free bus travel to go and watch the best soccer that the world has to offer. And we want this to be a part of a vision where New Yorkers are not just struggling to afford to live in this city, but that they can also spread their wings in the city. They can go to a museum, they can watch a movie, they can go to a game and not have to worry about putting off their rent payment as an attempt to actually do it.